Richard Ojeda has announced a 2020 Democratic run against Donald Trump. Now, Richard Ojeda is the guy that lost his congressional race against Carol Miller in West Virginia's 3rd District. Now, you might wonder, why would someone that lost a congressional race, why would they run against Donald Trump? Well, let me show you one of his ads that he ran against Carol Miller. And just to give you an idea, if you don't know already, what kind of person Richard Ojeda is.
I'm Richard Ojeda, and people say that I'm angry. Well, angry is an understatement. When I come home and I find that I got children in my backyard that have it worse than the kids that I saw in Iraq and Afghanistan, I can't accept that. When I see companies using bankruptcy loopholes to keep from paying our coal miners the pensions that they work for, I will not sit quiet. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been sold out. We've been sold out by people like Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, and the Washington insiders. I approve this message because I am angry, and I'm ready to fight back.
So, Richard Ojeda is angry. And I think this is one of the best qualities about Richard Ojeda. So even though he lost this race in West Virginia against Carol Miller, he made up more ground than anyone else in the entire country. So he lost in a district that went, I think it was plus 49 for Donald Trump. And he only lost to Carol Miller by 13 points. Again, he made up more ground than anybody else in the entire country. This shows you that he has the potential to swing even Trump voters, which I'm going to get to in a minute here is good and bad. But let me break down some of how I see Richard Ojeda in terms of good qualities and bad qualities and potentially how this may all work out for him. So first up, Ojeda is a left-wing populist. He is sort of the left-wing answer to Donald Trump in terms of how out there he is with his anger, some of his positions on policy. So he didn't support all progressive policy in his run against Carol Miller. I have some thoughts about that. I'll get to that in the bad section. But Ojeda, I think, is largely somebody that can be viewed as the opposite of Donald Trump in terms of somebody that actually cares about working people and is speaking to those real issues. Now, he also another quality, I mean, I mentioned this already, he's angry. Now, some people may take that as a negative, but I think this sort of anger is good. Now, people like, so there's someone who also is, you see a lot, Michael Avenatti, he's also angry a lot. Now, I think Avenatti is somebody who just loves the spotlight, loves himself, and isn't necessarily interested in the real issues affecting real Americans. But if there is a quality about Avenatti that I think he shares with Ojeda, that's the anger, the willingness to go there, to really go after Donald Trump, actually attack him on these issues viciously. So that's a quality I think that more Democrats need, more progressives need. That's a quality I wish Bernie Sanders had a little bit more of. But also, I can get into a whole discussion about Bernie Sanders, but I also think Bernie Sanders is who he is because he is such a kind-hearted, gentle person. So maybe that sort of quality wouldn't necessarily, fit him, but it does fit Richard Ojeda, and I think it's a strong quality, especially for somebody that's going to be potentially on a debate stage against Donald Trump. Now, two more in the good column here. Now, this one, it maybe is not good to some people. I see this as a good and bad quality, so I put it in both, and that's he voted for Donald Trump. Now, you may think, What? How did this so-called progressive, this left-wing populist, how did he vote for Donald Trump? Well, he is, first of all, in West Virginia, where Donald Trump is who everybody voted for. So Ojeda supported Bernie Sanders in the primary against Hillary, and then he's one of those swing voters that went from supporting Bernie to supporting Donald Trump. Now, I think that was stupid. I think you have to be fairly blind to reality to think Donald Trump is going to do anything for you. But I look at his vote in terms of the context that it's in. He's in West Virginia. A lot of his constituents voted for Donald Trump. So if you want to look at this as a purely political move, which I think a part of it likely was, then it's more acceptable. That said, this is also a bad quality about Richard Ojeda because him voting for Trump is absolutely something that can be used against him, especially in the Democratic primary. So if he is allowed on a debate stage, and I have potential feelings about that, I don't know if he will be allowed on a debate stage, but if he is, his vote for Trump will absolutely be used against him. But before I get to more of the bad, one more thing on the good. He has experience as a state senator in West Virginia, so he's not just, out of nowhere. Now, some people will see that as a negative quality, thinking that, no, we need someone who's like an activist who came from, Standing Rock right to the White House. I just don't think that's realistic. I think it's good to have some experience as a politician so you know what the job is like, how to do stuff. So having Ojeda, having his experience as a state senator is good. Now, to the negative side here, while he has experience as a state senator, he has no experience on the national level. And that will also be held against him. So he's not a congressperson. He was never a senator. So he is somebody that has just worked within his state as a politician and not nationwide. So I see that as a negative, especially in terms of how the media will portray him. They'll see this person as sort of, out of left-wing ballpark. This is somebody that, why should we take him seriously? He hasn't even been a congressperson. So I can see that being used against him. But I mean, I don't think it's that huge of a negative. Another negative here, he did not run on some progressive issues, including Medicare for all. Now, again, I think this may just be the state that he's in. So, I mean, for me, when I see someone who supported Bernie Sanders in the primary, I'm willing to bet that he is open to supporting Medicare for all and open to supporting other big progressive issues that maybe he didn't support in his run against Carol Miller. So I think a lot of how he ran in West Virginia's 3rd District is simply who his constituents were, and maybe his feeling that he had to be more acceptable in their eyes by being a little more to the right on some issues than otherwise a left-wing populist should be. Also, this is the last point I have about potentially negatives against Ojeda, and that's the media could just completely ignore him. So again, this is what they do with Bernie Sanders, who is a senator, but they largely ignore him. I see discussions all the time about potential 2020 candidates on television, and Bernie Sanders is never brought up, almost never brought up. And why? I mean, he barely lost to Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, after losing in 2008, was seen by all of the media establishment as, oh, obviously Hillary's next. It's Hillary's turn now. But for Bernie, after he lost in 2016, they don't see him as, oh, obviously Bernie Sanders is next. You know why? Because Bernie Sanders is anti-establishment. He wants to, in their minds, destroy everything they have. So he wants to tax the rich more. He wants to go after corporations, tax corporations more. He wants to regulate the oil industry, big pharma, Wall Street. So when you look at it from that perspective, that's why people like Bernie Sanders and potentially Richard Ojeda won't get as much attention as some of the other establishment favorite candidates like a Kamala Harris or a Cory Booker or a Kirsten Gillibrand, though I think she said she's not running. Even Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren, I think, is more acceptable to the establishment press than Bernie Sanders or Richard Ojeda will be. Also, actually, I didn't write this down, but it's a point that should be under negative because it can hurt him, especially in the primaries, and that is he is a white man. Now, if you may think that's just playing identity politics, but the reality is that's also the biggest potential hit against Bernie Sanders. And it's simply because there needs to be more representation for all other kinds of people that aren't old white men in government. Now, I know it's purely in your mind a visual thing, but it's also an experience thing. When you have experience as somebody that is a minority, whether you're black, Latino, whatever, you have a different perspective on issues than a white man has. Now, even if you support those strong progressive policies that address those issues, like Bernie Sanders does, for a lot of people voting who aren't aware of your platform, aren't aware of your history, that doesn't really matter. So I'm putting it under the bad category because of how Ojeda can be perceived. So he can be perceived as somebody who may be out of touch with those issues. And the fact is, he likely isn't as aware of those issues and how to deal with that as somebody that comes from that community. So it's one of those, that's an issue that I think is really going to be, we're going to see a lot of division on in the primaries simply around identity. Now, I think people should, of course, focus most on policy and their history. Someone like Bernie Sanders, who has a 40-year history of being on the same side of every issue, being correct on these issues, being there before anyone else was. I mean, Bernie Sanders supported gay marriage in the 80s or in the 70s. So Bernie has been there all along on these issues. I think out of anyone, if Bernie runs, the primary or the win for the primary, the nomination should go to Bernie Sanders. But you have to be in a fight against other people. So when you have Ojeda there, potentially Bernie Sanders there, Elizabeth Warren there, Kamala Harris there, Cory Booker, Joe Biden, hopefully not, or hopefully, because the more of these sort of establishment-friendly candidates like Joe Biden, like Kamala Harris, like Cory Booker, the more of these people that go up, the more that they will divide the vote for that audience. Whereas the progressive vote will be hopefully more consolidated around someone like Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren if Bernie doesn't run, or maybe even Richard Ojeda. So, all things being equal here, I think the progressive candidate, whoever it is, has the greatest chance. But they only have that chance if the vote on the other side in that division is divided among more candidates. Because you just know, whether it's CNN, MSNBC, The Washington Post, New York Times, Politico, all these big major media outlets, they're going to prop up certain people. And they're not going to be propping up Bernie Sanders or Richard Ojeda or even Elizabeth Warren. So this fight is now starting. And Ojeda, I think, is the first exciting name to join this race, officially join this race. And we're going to see more like it. But these debate stages, I was thinking about this yesterday. It might be a little too much like the Republican Party in 2016, where there's like multiple debates. There's like the B debate, then the A debate, and if you do well in the B debate, then you can make it to the A debate next time, or the stage will be full of like 20 people. I hope that isn't the case, but that is what's going to happen. There are so many people you wouldn't even think could have any chance, but they've convinced themselves they can win. Someone like Hickenlooper or Klobuchar, like just these people that have zero chance at winning, but people around them have told them, "Oh, you got a shot, you should run." So they're gonna run. They're gonna be out fairly early, like Lincoln Chafee, and then the ones that will be left will be Bernie if he runs, Elizabeth Warren if she runs, and likely a couple other establishment favorites like Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. Now, Ojeda, I think, throws in a wrench here in this sort of brings in this idea that potentially somebody that we don't know too much of could come in and sort of take everyone by surprise. But he has to be able to win states as a Democrat. I think Ojeda against Trump, if that were to happen, Ojeda takes it. Ojeda would get Trump voters, but Ojeda doesn't necessarily have the ability to win some of the southern states. So I don't know if he has that, he lacks name recognition, but I do like that Ojeda has fight in him. And this is a quality that other candidates need to adopt, not necessarily in the primary, but they need that fight against Donald Trump to be able to win, I think, nationally against him in 2020.